Many outstanding fighter pilot achievements may seem almost unbelievable, but once you have learned how they accomplished these victories and the system they used, you'll realize it's just a trick of the trade, carried out by fighting men with the ability and know-how that it takes to win aerial battles. This picture is designed to take the mystery out of how our VF pilots knock down enemy fighters. It's something you've got to learn, because while destroying enemy fighters is seldom your primary mission, it's a vital part of your job in protecting our bombers and torpedo planes, and in clearing the way for destruction of the enemy's attacking bombers and torpedo planes. Enemy single-seaters are your toughest competition. Usually they'll be about on a par with your own equipment. Small ships, very fast and maneuverable. You have to fight them with your head, using your judgment, your skill in plane handling, and your superior gunnery to turn the odds in your favor. In fighting another fighter, you have to make the handling of your plane practically automatic and concentrate on watching the enemy. You haven't time to think about flying a plane. You have to spend all your time flying a bullet. Complete your checkoff list before you go into action. Your enemy isn't going to give you time out to fumble for a gun switch or adjust a stabilizer once he knows you're around. In fighting fighters, it's a matter of life insurance to make every split second count. The fighter is smaller and a higher speed target than any other combat plane. Therefore, it's doubly important for you to get the pipper in the right place. You're not going to be able to stay on the target long, so you'd better be right on your lead. What's more, you can't just put your sights on a Jap Zero or a German 190 and let go. You have to hit a fighter in the most vulnerable spot, or he'll stay right in the game with you. The engine, the pilot, and the fuel and oil tanks are the fighter's vitals. Aim for the engine. It's the largest vulnerable part of the target, and it comes into range first. Allowing for lead, use the engine as a bullseye and pour your shots in there. As the lead drops back, you'll naturally hit the other vital spots. It is important to gain initial advantages through position on the enemy. Altitude is your wealth. Never spend it unless it buys you speed or advantageous firing position. Whenever you can, launch an attack out of the sun. You also gain the element of surprise when you can strike from out of the clouds on an unsuspecting enemy. The gunnery approaches used against multi-placed aircraft are modified somewhat when you're up against fighters. The head-on is not the best because it gives the enemy an equal opportunity to shoot it out with you. And why give him an even break? The side approach can be changed into a variety of attacks against enemy fighters because their firepower is concentrated forward. Against a fighter, you can start a quarter approach and finish up on the tail. Or you can start a run off the target's nose and pull around close behind him. The fighter is the only plane against which the stern approach is preferable to all others. You get an almost no deflection shot at him, and he can't shoot back. All he can do is keep turning to try to get out of your gun sight. And when he does, you match every turn, firing a short burst when you know you're on. The steep overhead approach used against multi-placed aircraft is also modified in fighting single-seaters. Start it, if you can, with about a 2,000-foot altitude advantage. When you make an overhead attack against a plane of superior performance, delay your rollover a little and flatten your dive. Use your diving speed to break away sharply and recover out of his range. When the enemy has about the same performance as your plane, you can delay an overhead run still further. making your dive even flatter. And instead of breaking away, you can stay right on his tail. If he turns aside to make you overrun, you can swing to the outside of his turn, slip into the saddle position, and still stay on his tail. But if you swing too wide, there is danger that he'll reverse his turn, get you in a scissors, and meet you head on. Once you have mastered these approaches, you are a menace to the enemy from any position. But above all, don't be overconfident. Never underestimate your enemy. Don't attack recklessly. Many a fighter has started diving on an enemy, fat, dumb, and happy, only to find that there were enemy planes above, just waiting for him to go after the decoy so they could pounce on him. Before you attack, make sure there are no bandits 6 o'clock up. Don't fall for the enemy's tricks. More than once, a fighter pilot has seen a dogfight off in the distance and rushed in alone to try to help out a pal, only to find that the fight was staged by 2 enemy planes just to slicker him into unequal combat. Watch out for tricks like this. Sometimes they work. Don't try to dogfight unless you are sure you can outmaneuver the enemy. If you can't turn inside his turn, this is what happens to you. If he can execute a high wing over inside yours, this is what happens to you. And if you suddenly find yourself in this position and try scissors with him, eventually he'll get on your tail and cut you down. The best way to beat this fighter is to start at least 2,000 feet above, barrel on in, shoot him, break away sharply in the blind spot beneath his wing so he can't see you until you are out of his range and away. There are defensive tactics to use against an enemy with superior maneuverability, and you will see how they work in the following picture of this series. Unless you have a superiority in numbers, you should get altitude advantage before starting an attack, even against an inferior fighter. If you are behind the enemy and he doesn't see you, it's a simple matter to push over into a dive and get on his tail. If he turns under you, do an opposite overhead. If he tries an Immelman, pull up and shoot him on his back, or do a high wing over above him and get on his tail before he can recover. The idea of plane against plane combat is very romantic of World War I ever dreamed. The keynote of fighter tactics in the United States Navy today is teamwork. Teamwork, coordination, cooperation, call it what you will, gives the fighter its greatest value in escorting bombers and torpedo planes on their missions, in enabling fighters to protect other fighters, in winning engagements that may mean the losing or the saving of a carrier. Teamwork begins with the 2-plane section, and its pilot should concentrate on working together, even against a single enemy fighter. If the enemy plane is approaching and you and your wingman are above and unseen, it is a simple matter to do opposite overheads in quick succession, reaching effective range, breaking away and recovering in bracket formation for a second attack if it should be necessary.